This is Strong Fellow Podcast with your hosts, John, Christopher. Ready or not, here we are.
When I was younger, I couldn't stand reading. I remember every summer when I was in grade school and all the way up until high school, we'd have an assigned reading list that we'd have to pick at least 2 books and make sure they were read before the summer's end. Then, by a certain day for the beginning of the school year, we'd have to give a report on what we've read. I grew up going to school in the 1990s, and this was before you could easily look stuff up on sites like Wikipedia for information. So you actually had to read the books and draw your own conclusions from them. It's so ironic that as you get older, you learn to appreciate tedious stuff like that a little bit more. And I want to talk today about how to expand your knowledge. And this advice is just as good for a gentleman as it is for a woman. So with that in mind, I think that the best way to expand your knowledge, as well as gain greater insight and also improving your core competencies, is to be well-read. Being well-read is the key to being more knowledgeable, being a better conversationalist, and improving your success in life and business. Now, there's few things more dangerous in this life than a fool, and that's an ignorant one. A person who's never cracked open a book before in his life. That's the sort of person that's more susceptible to being deceived or manipulated by others. If you can keep the masses in the dark, uneducated, and unread, you can easily control them. I mean, isn't that the way of what all dictators in the past have taught us? I mean, look at 1930s Germany, when the Nazis had, on a regular basis, book burnings. They didn't want their people to be educated, to really understand what's going on and what they had in mind. Such is the same with all authoritarian despots. Many books contain critical information that can improve the human condition, that can enlighten the free thinker, and can change perspectives the moment those words on the page are put into context and applied. The King James Holy Bible is the greatest example that sets and exceeds the standard of the aforementioned notions. The Lord Jesus had certainly put it best when he spake, "And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free." From the Gospel of John, chapter 8, verse 32. It is certainly a powerful thing to be informed by what we read, and it's even more so when the good things are read and conveyed to others. How do you expect to know what's going on around you if you don't pick up a book or read? How can you think you're going to get ahead in this life without extensively studying the pages of a specific or particular field of interest? For instance, like chemistry, science, or engineering, without reading? How can you qualify your opinions or defend your positions without looking at historical facts or figures to back them up? You have to be well-read. It goes without saying. Or how can you enhance or take your type of conversations to the next level with people without first taking the time to be caught up on current events, interesting stories that you've read, and can translate them into cogent and a cohesive string of thoughts that'll be intelligibly stated? That all comes back to picking up a book and reading it. Books can be extremely informative, but they could also be detrimental or poorly written and convey messages that are not so good. Notwithstanding, people have to use discernment when choosing your reads. Christians most especially. The minds of men operate like sponges that can so easily soak up things that influence people in the wrong way. But, in any regard, books have a profound effect on people. One such that I still remember from years ago was a book entitled Lone Survivor. This book was a biographical account written by retired Navy SEAL Marcus Luttrell and Patrick Robinson. The book encompasses in great detail the rigors of Navy SEAL training, and then takes the reader to the ill-fated mission of SEAL Team 10 involved in Operation Red Wings, where one of the largest losses of Navy SEALs occurred back in June of 2005. Lone Survivor is a harrowing account about a 4-man team assigned to capture or kill a local Taliban commander, Ahmad Shah. The story goes that not long after their insertion, the men were discovered by goat herders. The SEALs nobly decided to let them live, and in doing so, the enemy was alerted to their presence. The book then goes on to describe in visceral detail a firefight atop of the precipitous mountains of Afghanistan between an overwhelming force of Taliban fighters and the Navy SEALs. The pages couldn't be turned faster by my fingertips as I read how the SEALs valiantly fought off their determined foes, dropping hundreds of rounds of ammunition into enemy positions and maneuvering, albeit forcefully, off steep mountain cliffs in an effort to stay alive. Friendly QRF, or a Quick Reaction Force, was called in by the team's commander, Lieutenant Mike Murphy, who bravely sacrificed his life for the sake of his brothers, by exposing himself to enemy fire to try and get a signal from his sat phone to call in for reinforcements. Murphy's actions would later result in posthumously receiving the Medal of Honor. As the account goes, 2 American Chinooks were called and filled with over a dozen Navy SEALs and Army Night Stalkers. Upon their arrival, and before they could land, one of them was hit with an RPG, or rocket-propelled grenade, and immediately killed everyone on board. Under heavy enemy fire, the second had no choice but to turn back before they'd suffer the same fate. This resulted in Marcus and his remaining teammates to fend for themselves and keep up the fight. Ultimately, Danny Dietz and Matthew Axelson, the other SEALs with Luttrell, succumbed to their gunshot wounds, leaving only Marcus alive. Seriously wounded himself, Marcus skillfully evaded his would-be killers and made his way to a nearby village where a villager by the name of Gulab, a Pashtun, would take him in and protect Marcus until he was rescued by Army Rangers. From start to finish, the images gleaned off the words of this book are etched in my memory and transport the reader into this harrowing world of unyielding heroism and the indomitable willpower for a man to stay alive in conditions or circumstances that are well beyond his control. I came away from the book thinking that perseverance was one of the most overt characteristics displayed in the pages of this book, as well as the grace of God upon Marcus, allowing him to survive and honor the memory of his teammates many years later by relaying this tale of unsung heroism. I was fortunate to meet Marcus in a Brazilian restaurant back in 2010 in New York, and I'll share with you a side anecdote in my interaction with him. So, back in 2010, someone from Facebook had put together a meeting and luncheon for Marcus. I had with me my copy of Lone Survivor and was intent on taking a day off from work to go and meet him. It was a well-attended gathering. About 70-80 people were there. Now, when I first met him, I was impressed by his stature and how down-to-earth the man was. Looking at him, he stood about 6'2", solid-looking dude that had an easy-going posture about him and was very amicable when you'd approach him. This was one of the first times I was meeting a well-known public figure, and I was a bit nervous about it. So, when I met him, I shook his hand and thanked him for the service to our country. He responded in kind with, "You're welcome." I gotta tell you, the way he composed himself was the manner of a gentleman, but at the same time, he looked like one tough dude from Texas. You look up the phrase tough Texan, and I wouldn't be surprised if you saw this guy's face in there. Certainly not someone you'd want to mess with. But I did anyway. This was done in a respectful manner, though. I asked Marcus after he signed my book if I could take a Polaroid with him. His eyes widened when he heard that and said, "You have a Polaroid? Take that out and let's see." In my mind, I was like, oh, this guy thinks I'm serious about having a Polaroid in my bag. Crap, how do I let him know that's just a figure of speech, I thought. Then I said, no, that's just a figure of speech. And we both chuckled and took a picture together. I had this $1 million sort of smile on my face while he was serious and had this 1,000-yard stare. That's a sort of stare you don't easily lose, I guess, for anyone having been involved in combat. So after that, we overindulged in some of Brazil's finest cuisines, talking with Marcus and with one another, living through some of the best memories to be fondly looked back on and treasured for the rest of our lives. It's one of the rare instances where a book brought me face to face with its author. Books are important, and being well read opens up opportunities that you might not otherwise have. So let me take the time to recommend this to you, the listener. Be sure to take time out of your day to pick up a book and read it if you have any free time. If you don't have any free time, then you're too busy and you need to carve out some time to do so. At a minimum, you should be reading 3 books a year. I would also add personally that the Holy Bible, a book you should be reading over and over again, be among them. Be sure to choose subjects that are going to stimulate your mind and challenge you to think objectively. Furthermore, for the career-minded folks, check out books written by accomplished professionals who've got well-established reputations in their fields and read up on what they have to say about the field you're currently working in or are intent in working in down the road. Don't be afraid to ask people for their opinions on recommended reads either. Moreover, I do personally believe that classic literature should be at the top of everyone's reading list. If you want to be cultured, check out some plays by Shakespeare. If you're looking for adventure, well, how about picking up a story from Mark Twain like Tom Sawyer or Huckleberry Finn? What's more, if you're looking for an epic, try something from Tolstoy, such as War and Peace. For special interests like cars or the mechanical workings of things, check out some articles from Popular Mechanics. Most of their stuff is insightful. If you have a particular vocation, like a healthcare worker, doctor, or nurse, Why not pick up Grey's Anatomy? I mean the book, not the show. Too many folks already watched that one. I wouldn't want to put my life in a TV show buff's hands. But the underlying point here is this. Reading will make you a more well-rounded person. Being well-read is a major advantage that you can't afford to overlook. All right, everyone, it's been a pleasure to be here with you today. I'd like to give a special shout out to Kevin MacLeod for providing our opening and closing theme. Thank you for listening to Strongfellow Podcast. I'm your host, John Christopher, and until next time, ready or not, we'll see you then.